Graduating Creative Writing Seniors Reading. I just want to remind everybody before we get started to please make sure that your cell phones are on silent. We'll turn it off if you prefer before we get started tonight. We've got 6 readers, each of whom will come up here and read a sample of their work tonight. And we're going to lead off with Bethany Barber. Bethany Barber is a creative writing major with a minor in German. She lives in Hickson, Tennessee, and attended Silverdale Baptist Academy, where she discovered her love of reading and writing in her English courses. At Berry, she works as a weaver at the student enterprise known as Viking Creations, and is a longtime member of Writers, Inc., a writing interest group that has encouraged her to improve her public speaking skills as well as her actual writing. So here's Bethany Barber.
This is Not So Fairy Tale. The grand staircase lived up to its title. The blue carpet draped across the chestnut wood in a rippling cascade, pooling at the bottom of the steps into onyx tiles stretching across the ballroom. Twinkling chandeliers hung over Morgana's head, illuminating the carefully chosen table pieces. White tablecloths with white chairs filled with the chattering guests in luscious gowns or sleek uniforms. Medals of valor and prestige flashed in the light, as though worried that they wouldn't be seen even with chests filled with inflated importance. Morgana smiled politely and murmured demurely when the uniforms congratulated her, giggled primly at the gowns who whispered over coy advice. She stood in the receiving line, the place at her side empty and the weight on her left ring finger heavy. Morgana's spine straightened instinctively at the sound of her mother's voice. She smiled tremulously at the guest before her, who dipped into a curtsy and skittered away before the presence of her mother. Josephina of Ostagon, Queen of Barbadon. The royal mother's mouth curved in a sharp smile as she nodded graciously to the guests, turning back to Morgana as she inspected her for an ounce of frivolity or unscrupulous demeanor. Dear mother, thought Morgana, you banished frivolity and joy from my spirit years ago. Josephina swiped a strand of Morgana's crimson hair from her forehead, tucking it back into the tight braid she had the servants weave before the ceremony. She nodded, a lift of her painted red lips. Morgana was presentable again. Why are you not by your lord's side? Mother stepped beside her, smiling and nodding at the guest with her hand resting at the crook of Morgana's arm, her nails cut into the tender flesh. My lord and husband has dismissed me from his side, Morgana intoned, her eyes feeling hot as she continued to smile. He has charged me to entertain the guest as he discusses politics. Morgana could see her husband near her late father's suit of armor, surrounded by a flock of colorful skirts and toasting the health of these young ladies with his 5th glass of wine. Prince Randall, her husband, quite enjoyed his political talks with the young ladies. Who can blame the man for celebrating? He has lived to his 40th year and secured the hand of the fair Princess Morgana, their union assuring his right to the throne of Barbadon. The lords and ladies have congratulated Morgana's good fortune, marrying a man of great renown, excellent condition, and who held such a large amount of the land in the neighboring kingdom when she was merely 16. Yes, they say she is extremely fortunate. Prince Randall is wise. It is important to maintain good relations with nobility even during a wedding. Josephina straightened the silverware on the table beside her. It is your role, my Morgana, to entertain as it is your prince's duty to negotiate trade. Morgana's jaw twitched, noting how Randall leaned into a flushed girl's cheek, twirling a piece of her hair in his slender and calloused hand as she giggled madly. Her wedding band seemed to constrict her finger. Yes, mother, Morgana whispered through grated teeth. Her cheeks felt tight and her eyes tighter. Her heart beat fast and her billowing white dress clung to her skin like cobwebs. She wanted it all. Her stomach flipped as she saw Randall kiss the young noblewoman's cheek. The girl giggled, scrunched her nose, and batted at Randall playfully as his pale hand pulled at her skirts. Morgana pictured those cold, thin hands on her tonight. She swallowed her bile and dipped her head toward a dignitary complimenting the luxurious ballroom. "Your Highness, Your Grace, would you care for some wine?" Morgana latched onto the voice, turning from her mother's raised eyebrow. Dominic stood before them, posture as straight as the oak trees he'd let Morgana climb when she was only 6 years old and he a kitchen boy of 10. It was Morgana who had suggested his promotion to butler to her father, a small gesture of gratitude for Dominic's friendship over the years as they drifted apart. Their stations, though small during their youth, could not be ignored by Josephina forever. Dominic bowed his head, his black hair blocking Josephina's view as he made scandalous eye contact with Morgana. She glanced at his offering. He held a serving dish with 2 glasses of wine, one filled nearly to the brim and the other containing hardly 2 mouthfuls, just as Morgana had instructed him. "None tonight, boy," Josephina sniffed. Morgana stared, eyes glazed at the full glass of wine, telling herself to take it, just as planned. Dominic tilted his head in questioning, holding forth the platter to her, assurance in his eye. She reached for the glass, faint trembling in her fingers as she took it from the dish. Dominic bowed once, weaving expertly through the crowd with the platter held high. When she saw Dominic posted by the door, she lifted the glass to her lips. Josephina turned to greet another one of the visiting lords. Morgana inhaled a steadying breath, the sting of alcohol filling her nostrils, and with the tip of her wrist she drank, the bitter tang of potent herbs coating her tongue with a tingling sensation. Josephina continued to regale her guests with tales of her new and somewhat successes as Morgana's eyes drooped as each hour passed. She pulled out a chair from one of the tables. The screech of the legs against the stone caught her mother's attention. "Get up," Josephina hissed. "This is not befitting of a princess." "I feel faint, Mother." Morgana played up the lethargy in her voice as the potion weakened her limbs. Morgana had never felt so relaxed. "What is the matter with you?" Josephina muttered as Morgana sank across the table. "Morgana?" "The wine," Morgana crooned sleepily as her mother plucked the glass from her hand. The last thing Morgana heard before slipping into darkness was someone's shriek. "The princess has been poisoned."
Our next reader is Brooke Copeland. Brooke is a creative writing major with minors in Spanish and psychology. She writes mainly fiction, but also enjoys creative nonfiction. She can be seen on campus riding her hot pink scooter. Missed that. And in her spare time, she can be found watching the latest episode of Riverdale or iZombie, or working on her novel series. Her current after-graduation plans, and I think they may have changed, but are Black Cat ownership. I'm sure that hasn't changed. And moving either to Columbia, Maryland, or Orlando, Florida, or
It's Columbia, Maryland now. So.
Columbia, Maryland. Just got a job today.
I'm also wearing heels. Okay, so this first piece that I'm going to read is called Hospitals and Redemption. However, it is just a little excerpt, so you're not going to hear about hospitals or redemption. Just all you need to know is that these characters hate each other. That's it. So, I'm in the middle of the concrete outside my garage when I hear a waterfall of soapy water behind me. Then it crashes into my head. I turn to face my attacker. Peter's standing there with a grin. He's staring at me, ogling at how my shirt just became skin tight. I hope he can see the water turning to steam on my head. I look down for the hose and realize it's on the other side of my car. "Aw, look at you. You're soaked, Cat," he says, dropping the bucket and winking at me. "It's Kate," I want to yell back at him. Instead, I turn around and calmly walk to the other side. "What? Nobody remark? No sarcasm?" Cat got your tongue, he says. I roll my eyes as I spot the hose and stop in front of it. Peter remains oblivious to my next move. You know, it's funny that you think this is the way to win someone's affection, I say, while picking up the hose with my feet and kicking it into my hand. Kitty cat, I shoot him in the face on full blast. He turns to run, but this is a 100-foot hose. I run after him, forcing him into the house through the front door. I spray the door for good measure before walking back to my car and start drying it off. Cool, okay. So the next thing I'm going to read is called Dolly Parton Rides in the Trunk, and it is in your book if you want to look along with me. So, okie dokie. She came with a car, currently folded up in the trunk of my dad's 68 Plymouth GTX Hemi. She's faded and browned, like paper does when it's stuck to cardboard for almost 50 years. Even though she doesn't quite fit back together, her proportions are still beautifully exaggerated in her bedazzled white evening gown, and her smile gleams through a coat of dust. Her blonde hair is still curled and teased 2 feet from her head, and no wrinkles crease her face yet. She came with a car because whoever has Red's car should have Dolly too. Red the mechanic. Red the one with the car my dad lusted over before he could drive. Red the one with a wife and a girlfriend. Red the one who somehow got Richard Petty over for dinner. Red the one who died too young. Dolly stood in his shop in mourning until it sold, when she was folded up and placed gently in the car. She came with the car, and now she follows him wherever he goes. Okay, and then this last poem that I'm going to read needs a little bit of backstory. So if you never lived at Ford, I lived at Ford my freshman year on the 3rd West Mary. Now, in between 3rd West Mary and 3rd Central, there's a room. It's a triplet, it's in the tower, and it's supposedly haunted. And that is where this poem takes place. So, I can see, they look for me, or their emerald faces and translucent dresses. They haunt my dreams, whispering frights as I sleep. They poke and prod at lights, constantly flicking them on and off, on and off, on and off. They call out, Ashley, talk to us, entertain us. Tell us about the boy you went to dinner with, about the teacher who angered you, the girl who stayed over last night, who you talked with about comics until you fell asleep. I ignore them and pray they go torture someone else soon. It has been 2 months since I slept through the night, 2 weeks since my double room turned into a single. Nothing can force my eyes not to see their green shadows, my ears not to hear their whispers, my fingers not to turn cold in their presence, and my mind not to wonder why they are trapped here. I cannot ignore them anymore. They never told me their names. They know mine well. I only know them by their wounds. One drips green blood through the room. It runs in a small stream through the cut on her hairline. The blood, it's not really there. I still shudder when she gets angry and paints the wall with broad strokes. Another's head never stays up and moves limply into whichever direction she turns to. The white scarf around her neck stopped looking like one some time ago. She never stops crying about some boy named Jack. The last one is horrific. She is smaller than the other two and is covered in burn scars. She appears from nowhere. She scares me the most because she is playing a game with me. She is unpredictable and requires constant attention. If she doesn't get it. Checking out a book on sage smudging, easy. Collecting sage from mountain canvas, easy. Placing a drop of cedarwood oil on each leaf, tricky. Binding it with twine, making a stick out of leaves, tricky. Igniting it without them noticing, near impossible. Open up the windows, lock the door, take a breath, light it before they can protest. Cool, and that's it. That's all I got for you.
Thank you, Brooke. Our next reader tonight is Kayla Fuss. Kayla Fuss is a creative writing major who enjoys writing fiction, mostly fantasy. Her interests besides writing include music and video games. She plans to work with writing the background stories for video games. So here's Kayla Fuss.
So this is the first part of chapter 1 for the novel I'm working on. I balanced precariously on the road. I can't believe I'm doing this. Balancing was not even the hard part. The difficult part was balancing holding 4 swords, all sharpened. One in each hand, one with a larger hilt base balanced on my head, and a dual-bladed one in my mouth. This wasn't the first time I had done this, nor was this the largest crowd we've had, despite the raucous uproar being made. The large round room under the tent-like structure housed easily over 100 people, yet we were only a quarter full tonight. I've always had good balance and been a good climber. I look down slightly as a passing breeze goes past. The sword on my head falls as my head tilts forward. The sword I have in my mouth drops as I yelp, and I drop the other 2 as I fling out my hands for balance. Thankfully, there is a net below, but sadly, the swords have landed blades up. I hear the crowd scream, though I cannot tell if it's from fear or worry for me, or from excitement from the show. No doubt they see this mistake as part of the act, as by this point I have lost my balance, sending me to the sharp swords below. With practiced ease, I pull out my hidden weapon from a pouch behind my back, a smaller version of my main weapon, and fling it so it wraps around the tightrope. I swing forward and up with the movement of my weapon, a kunai with chain, and land squarely back on the tightrope. Pulling my weapon free, I fling it once more, grabbing each of the other swords in turn and throwing them up in the air. After all of them are airborne, I stash the weapon, and first catch and place the one on my head, and catch the 2 hand swords and one to my mouth without looking up for them. Then, walking nimbly, I finish my journey across the room. I take the one off my head and the other out of my mouth, taking a small bow and backflip off the platform to the trampoline, backflipping once more to the ground. The crowd cheers with beaming smiles and laughs, while at the same time my boss backstage roars, red-faced. I walk behind the curtain that leads to the backstage area as the next performer walks out. I brace myself. I know it's coming.
Rhea, what the heck do you think you're doing? First, you make a rookie performance mistake. Then you reveal your weapon? Are you trying to get us caught, little girl?
No, sir, I was not. But personally, I would rather have not died. Plus, the crowd saw as part of the act, so I highly doubt anyone will think twice about it. My hands are on my hips in defiance. Besides, several of the others have shown off their weapons in their acts, so why can't I? You never yell at them, only at me. I'm starting to think you hate me. If that's the case, then I can always just go over to... I never finish my sentence.
No,
That's not necessary. I'm happier. But you have to do better is all I'm saying. I can't hear you. I produce my weapon again and have it suddenly in his throat. Look, all I want is a little respect. After all, I can take most full-grown men in a fight, and without any weapons, take them out. Heck, with a weapon, I can beat almost anyone. And do you know why? I ask, the blade still under his chin. He doesn't say anything or try to nod, as I could have possibly accidentally killed him with my extremely sharp blade. It may be a practice weapon, but he didn't know that. Instead, his eyes show the fear that comes from knowing how easily the opponent can end you with a drop of a hat, and a look of shame and guilt. He should know by now who taught me. The guild leader was the one who showed me all I know. Angering me is like angering him. So are you done with your little temper tantrum? I slowly move the blade away from his neck, and as soon as it's a few inches away, he turns and dashes away just as the crowd erupts in loud applause, making him jump sky high. The other performer walks backstage as yet another takes his place on stage. The boy sees my tense stance and puts a sly smile on his face. Are you in with the ringmaster again, Rhea? Blake asks, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, he's such a little brat at times. Heck, I pulled off one of the best recoveries ever, and he has the audacity to yell at me like a school kid, even though I'm 19. I'm one of the older members of this group, but no one seems to think I can do anything. Well, you know if anything happened to you, the leader would be furious. The poor ringmaster would not only lose his job, but probably a limb, if not his life. I can't blame him for wanting to keep you safe, the boy says, with his head lowered slightly. I cuff him on the back of the head. Stop that, would you, Blake? Anyway, we should probably get ready for curtain call. After all, the last act will be done soon. All right, have it your way, he replies as the crowd goes wild at the end of the final act. I hear the ringmaster's voice ring out, catching the attention of the audience with his booming volume. And now, let's give a round of applause for all our performers as they once again take the stage for one last bow. We all walk out with a bounce in our step, all 6 of us, 3 guys and 3 girls. We all bow meekly in unison as we recite mentally a little phrase that the ringmaster had taught us when he had started. Did I shine my shoes? As we bow down. And yes, I shine my shoes as we come up. This is simple, yet so very effective at keeping a unified look to the audience, even when at least half of us wished we could simply strangle him. As we walk backstage once more, I feel the penetrating gaze of my elder brother boring into me from the other side of the ring. He always came by to check on me after our run. So how did it go? He asked, a blank look on his face. But before I get the chance to answer, the ringmaster pipes up. She's at it again. Being reckless and nearly getting herself killed. She needs to learn her place here, he says as he turns to me. Hold it. We all look away as his hand flashes and a nearly invisible ripple of magic cuts into the ringmaster. In only a single movement, a living human being was taken out and not a word was said about it. So, Rhea, what's this about being reckless? I thought I told you to be more careful. Thank you.
Our next reader is Darian Peckshouse. Darian is a senior creative writing major and is the editor-in-chief at Barry's Literary and Arts magazine, Ramifications. And she's had her work published in Ramifications and Panoply, a literary zine with upcoming pieces in Cardinal Sins and Grub Street Literary magazine. She's also worked as the opinions editor for the Campus Carrier and has been involved with several nonprofit organizations throughout her time at Barry. She will be attending Warren Wilson College for her MFA in creative writing in the fall, which is a wonderful program.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be reading mainly from this chapbook, well, all from this chapbook actually, so if you guys want to follow along. Some of you have heard this poem several times by now, but I'm going to read it again because I love it. This is a playbook for telling your abuela she is being deported. You are boiling rice, the staccato of grains against bated breath. There is no peace and anticipation. You wait for them to soften. Click, click, the gas stove heating water. You mimic the sound with your heeled shoes. The faux hardwood floor is a sort of plastic that deadens your rhythm. You pace from pantry to pot, letting the weight of your body pull each footstep down, harshly, to remind yourself you are there. You got the rice is a side dish. You are making street tacos. Carne asada. You got the wrong rice. Steam from the pot rises. You continue to mimic the clicking, this time pressing knife to cutting board, but it's not right. The dull stay stuck in your ear. Diced cilantro and red onions, jasmine rice and chunked salsa, chipped plates, and the lingering sound of a dropped fork. So this next one is called 17 and Unclean. My knowledge is contained within the thimble on my granny's dresser. That thimble will spill by morning, its contents slick on mahogany, an oil leak lacking rainbows. My granny uses cloths, dampened, and warm soap suds to clean catfish grease, and her ashtrays, coated in the cinders of cigarillos and kush. She'll soak up my overturned knowledge with thin, pre-arthritic fingers and forget that I am watching. Granny laughs, short, raspy laughs when I ask her how to clean my insides, but she still hands me a bottle of Dawn and says, "Drink up." So I'm going to skip this next one and move on to Pinyon and Pines. They didn't warn you. I opened my eyes during prayer. Pastor Lovely's pine pews are cousins, sisters, friends of this would, could, won't be modeled floret. Dear Lord, he prays, thank you for the skin broken on particulate teeth, and dear Lord, bless the battered whose scales peel back to reveal beatific visions, seeds cramped in spine. Dear Lord, he trembles, and I watch as his sleeves pour pine cones, inundating the half-empty pews with more like me. And this last one is the backwoods man. The backwoods man will call you honeybee and hit every pothole from here to the Piggly Wiggly. Will crash into you, will stop you dead, will never tell where he buried you, crying, ain't done it, and asking God how to get into heaven. He sits, lights off in his house, swatting at birds and flies, waiting for the woman with malleable, tightly plaited hair, those damn dirty braids, to pull his pilling shirts off, his pulled pink skin wrinkling and puckered, a few bills planted into palm after an hour passed. When the girl with hair gathered and secured by bright butterfly barrettes knew to run when he said her voice was sweet like honey, told the police of his idle truck in front of her school day after day, she was told to hush and watch his sagging mouth pronounce, ain't done it. This man, proud of lips that have never slipped squares or sipped on the thick-rimmed bottles lining liquor stores, was found bare-assed, overalls pulled around ankles, his bedroom carpet pressing indentations into his face, and quick-spit saliva settling at the base of his neck. His tombstone, unflowered, gave the honeybees some peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Darian. Our next reader is Kathleen Miner. Kathleen is from Dalton, Georgia. At Barry, she works as a carpenter for the theater department, building sets for plays, and she works as a research and film editing assistant for Dr. Campbell in the anthropology department. In her free time, she writes video essays and social justice videos for her YouTube channel, and she spends every Saturday back in Dalton at her Taekwondo school, where she is a third-degree black belt and is the captain of choreography for her Taekwondo demonstration team. She mainly writes fiction novels, but over the past year has found a love of poetry and has discovered that she can write raps. Let's welcome Kathleen Miner.
I've never been able to see over a podium, so I brought a stool. So I'm going to read 3 poems and give a little bit of backstory for each of them. So in October, my dad and I flew to Los Angeles, which is a long story in and of itself, but I had never flown before. It was freaking awesome. So I wrote a poem about it. This is October 2017. When I bought tickets, I switched our seats so my father could have the window on the way home, but he passed it to me, he said, because my nose was pressed to the glass. We traversed time zones invented for railroads and skimmed clouds of great wave peaks curled with the wind on their backs. Irrigation yo-yo quilts like I once made in the floor of our living room. Shadow cloaks slung behind mountains in the morning dawn. The Mordor crags and ancient kings must be those that eagle's wings once wrought from clay, but I seem to be alone. Spotlight on me in a cabin, pointing Rockies and little emerald crowns and canyon crooks to him. How can they sleep? Pull down blinds to the world soaring beneath their slippered feet. I free wrote for hours after Arkansas, and he watched over my shoulder, perplexed. Turbine soldiers standing guard over rent, ragged edges of skin, and school bus aneurysms up arterial roads. He shook his head a few times, but gave me the seat, and on the way home I pointed out the constellations glistening on the Earth's tattered skin. So the next one that I'm going to read came from a lot of places. Number one, I work in carpentry in the theater department building sets for plays, and this semester we did a lot of metalworking with steel for one of our sets. Number two, I've always had this problem that if you give me time to write something out, it'll be really articulate, but vocally I can't make a coherent argument to save my life. And it's really frustrating to want to speak but not be able to figure out how to vocalize what's in my head. Number three, we were reading Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time this semester, and I just found it so fascinating that this unbelievably brilliant mind is trapped in this body that's been robbed of any way to naturally express itself. So I took all of that and smashed it together in a poem. This is apraxia, which is a condition where you're not able to speak. Vocal cords stripped like paint and glue from black slicked steel. God's bruised knuckles clasped around the hilt of the chisel. He left me, wide eyes, pricked ear, babbling lips like koi drowning in summer breeze. But from my bones he drew stasis, wrapped it round sound until I became the radiation of black holes. They didn't know for years that I could contribute at all, only thought I absorbed what they threw at me and spit it back out through my other ear that they could not yet find. They couldn't see that I had the secrets of string theory strung through the paint strips at my feet. Turing's forgotten papers burnt in the blowtorch God used to pull steel from welded steel. Molten metal dripped to concrete, and I was forced to watch as they called to the world that I had nothing in my silent frame. At home, I wrote them all letters, pasted them on my walls and door, and covered every window pane until light was eclipsed by scribbled word. My light was eclipsed by tape and purple ink on tea-stained notebook leaves. I wrote the general theory of relativity 1,000 years before Einstein happened upon the scribbled words in his desk drawer. I quantified the universe while Heisenberg still scratched his head, stumped in the machinations of uncertainty. I imagined imaginary time and just for a laugh called it I in my own image with the blood of God's knuckles still spattered on my tennis shoes. Someday, I thought, they would find that inside my head had lain the theory of everything, but all they could hear was my silence. So the last one is in the chat book if you would like to follow along. It's called 1,000 Suns. And I'm a history nerd, so this is a whole bunch of historical images that focus on fire and light. And in particular, Robert Oppenheimer, who developed the nuclear bombs during World War II, when watching the nuclear tests in Los Alamos, he famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu scripture, and said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And he also likened the bombs to the radiance of 1,000 suns. So, this is 1,000 suns. Does not my heat astound you? Santa Ana flames in pajama fleece and curling pages in Berlin streets, baking fault lines through body stacks in Babi Yar. Girls running down firebomb streets as star-painted planes drop freedom through clouds. And light over Tory Gate, vermilion blood glaring down holy land of brimstone and uranium ash. Steel skeleton bones like trees in dust storm cancer breeze pouring over lower Manhattan. Waco flames around praying hands. Save us, speaks the man from this world. Save us, speaks the child, from this man. Does not their heat astound you? Aurora lights flickering out as a monk sits cross-legged, gasoline body stationary, silence on fainting lips until he tips. Statuesque boots break, topple down into Baghdad's spit. Have you seen my light? Glinting off two small window reflection scene of the Anbar boy watching a ball burst under sand-stained treads. Blinding behind tired eyes and neuron lines, flashing supernova light under Oppenheimer's gaze on a nuclear disease. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Does not my heat astound you?
Our final reader tonight is Siobhan Mulligan. Siobhan is a creative writing major from Suwanee, Georgia. She's happiest when traveling or petting a cat. If there are no planes or cats around, she enjoys painting, playing the piano, and trying to keep up with the cycle of work that college entails. After graduation, she will be attending the University of Glasgow for her Master of Letters in Creative Writing. She hopes to one day have a job that will pay enough for her to pursue her artistic passions.
So the first thing I'm going to be reading is in the chapbook that's at the back of the chapbook. And it's an excerpt from the first chapter of a novel I've been working on. A little bit of context is that the main character has been having these really weird dreams and woke up having drawn out images from some of them on a piece of paper without remembering it. And so he does what anybody would do and goes to a necromancer for advice. So this is from osteomancy. And also, there's a mention to the DDP, and that stands for the Department of Divination and Prophecy. It was with relief that Iz finished the trip to Cordelia's apartments without any more violent hallucinations. The petite pink-haired necromancer greeted him with a hug and led him over the threshold. When he crossed the runes she'd etched into the floorboards for protection, his headache disappeared for the first time that day. Listen, I'm not a shrink, so I don't know how much I can help you with bad dreams, Cordelia told him as she led him into the living room. But we'll see what the spirits have to say, okay? Whatever help you can give is great, I promise, Iz assured her. He took a seat on the couch as Cordelia disappeared into the kitchen. Her cat, Sparkles, followed her with a clack of bones. There was something creepy about the way the cat's shadow enveloped him with flesh and fur when the cat himself was only bones. He'd known Cordelia, and as such her cat, for years, but Sparkles took getting used to. I'm going to make you some tea for purification, Cordelia called from the kitchen over the noise of boiling water. If there's some kind of nasty energy following you, you really don't want it hanging around when you commune with the dead. Sounds good to me, whatever helps. From what Iz could see, Cordelia had certainly taken precautions against bad energy and malicious spirits. In addition to the runes carved by the door, salt lined the windowsills, and sprigs of rosemary hung above every entrance. An incense burner wafted smoke from the coffee table while scented candles burned every surface. What kind of spirits was she working with these days? Cordelia returned with 2 cups of tea. Are there any spirits you'd particularly like to talk to? A grandma? Great uncle? Sigmund Freud? She asked, then paused as she sat beside him. I may not be able to do Freud, unless you have like a super strong emotional connection to your AP Psych textbook. No, that's fine. He pulled the crumpled paper from his backpack and spread it out on the coffee table in front of him. Sparkles jumped up and tried to sit on it, and Iz waved him away with a hand. Just somebody who can help me figure out what all this means. Cordelia took a look at the paper, a frown on her lips. Well, I know what these individual runes mean, she said, stabbing at them with her finger. They're from the Elder Futhark alphabet, but there doesn't seem to be a pattern to them. I don't know about the lamb or that other chick. I haven't done dream analysis in a while. Sorry, Iz. If you're worried that they mean something, I'm not going to the DDP, he said firmly. You've seen all the rumors about them in the news. I don't want to risk it. Suit yourself. They are pretty creepy. She shrugged and patted Sparkle's skull. You ready to talk to some dead people? He downed the last of his tea, grimacing at the bitter taste, and nodded. Cordelia led him to a smaller room at the back of her apartment. He imagined it was originally intended to be an office, but she had converted it into her workroom. The protections were even stronger here, and the necromancer's tools of the trade hung on the walls. Lunar phase charts, jars of sage leaves and fennel seeds, a bag of candles, a bag of bones, other objects Iz couldn't name and wasn't sure he wanted to. He sat down in front of the altar that stood opposite the door and crossed his legs. Sparkles climbed into his lap and began purring. Cordelia methodically lit the altar's candles for those sepia pictures of her deceased relatives, neatly stored in a printer's tray on the wall. Once she finished her preparations, offering an orange on the altar, burning a few herbs for protection, and grabbing some kind of red gem, she sat beside him. Dear spirits, she began, her voice warm, we call upon you today to ask about the source of the nightmares that have been plaguing my companion Isaias. If you can imagine time passing on a mortal scale, would any spirit who recognizes Isaias from the past week please? Her sentence scaled away as Iz's vision swam. He closed his eyes and heard the susurrus of voices rushing past him. When he opened them again, a forest of tall pine trees spread in front of him like lines of soldiers marching into the fog. Undergrowth sprang up here and there, nests of ferns, briars curled around the trunk of a tree, flower bush. None of them fit together quite right, as if an inexperienced gardener had been charged with making the place look more natural. The effect of it all was distinctly unnatural. Iz jumped as he saw a pair of amber eyes staring at him from a scowling face. The man to whom they belonged stood a few yards away, his shoulders tense, his hands curled into fists. He twitched occasionally and flicked at the cobwebs that hung on his skin like decaying scraps of cloth. Who are you? And then, the poetry, these two poems are also in the chapbook. And this one is A Hedge Witch Considers Appalachia. Meadowgrass and mixed wood leaf for your mandolin song of spruce. Artemisia, fever here. Remembrance in mouth, mother and foremother, paintbrush and knife. Spoon cream, coffee rose, capture the lilac time. Watch the smoky grapevine of factories unfurl across their cirrus-strung trellises. Minimalist gray concrete, a study in values. Theirs or yours? Yours, whose purpose cures with burning bush, sugar beets sweet on your tongue, poured like cream into caffeine canker. Stir twice. Your roots scrape the walls as infinity falls to watch. And this last poem is called Obad with Hot Cross Buns. And Obad is a song or poem for the morning. And so this was inspired by getting hot cross buns for Easter and then eating them for breakfast for like 4 days straight. Obad with hot cross buns. Something sacred. Not the symbolism of dough striped 1-2 across their soft domes, but the incense scent of cinnamon and clove, the hushed orange. Her familial Easter cry, 1 a penny, 2 a penny. Alone now, she cradles them from the freezer in the shine of sugar-glazed frost. She hums with the microwave and toaster, rolls her shoulders, washes a peanut butter stain from a knife the dishwasher couldn't clean. She doesn't pray when not asked. Half a bun is gone before she makes time not for an holy act, but an attentive one, attuned to the soft chew of raisins on her molars, the spices warming her throat, and the path that wends to her plate. Gratitude for her mother, and the 40-minute drive to the one bakery in town that makes them right. The sing-song smile and guess what I bought you? Gratitude for the worker in front of industrial bowl and mixer, measuring and pouring flour and yeast, nutmeg and peel. Gratitude for the recipe and the grandmother who first made it, who wooden spoons sultanas like sun into dough and kneaded its thickening even when her fingers crisped and creaked. Gratitude for the burnt edges from too long in the toaster, which flake away between fingertips and dissolve in the mouth as medicine or wafer. Gratitude for the indulgent butter, which smudges her top lip as she eats, which she tastes afterwards with the tip of her tongue. Thank you.
As we finish up here, I'm going to ask that you indulge me and let me take your picture. Thank you. I want to be able to share this with the students who read the microphone here so they can remember the view from the front of the room, which is where these students belong. This was, again, an extraordinary group of students, and it was our honor and our pleasure to work with you. Make sure you stay in touch. You're nodding, right? And thank you all for coming, and I hope you'll hang around a while and have some food and talk to our writers and have them sign their chapbook. Then you'll have it for